Always curious, Professor George Washington Carver committed his life to scholarship, community, and the integration of his Christian faith with higher education. It's in this spirit we welcome you to Carver Classrooms.
Hi, I'm Kristen Penningen, and I'm a professor of linguistics and psychological brain sciences at Washington University in St. Louis. We've been talking a little bit about what linguistics is and what some of the terms we use when we talk about languages are. And today what I want to focus in on is the fact that languages vary at every level of linguistic structure. So even within a single language where we're understanding one another, we vary in terms of the way we produce the sounds of language. So that's the domains of phonetics and phonology. The words we use, which we refer to as linguists, we refer to as the lexicon or morphology, which is the formation of words. We also see variation in the way words are put together, the way they're strung together in the syntax, and even in the way they mean. So meaning, semantics, that varies even across speakers within a language. You've probably encountered other dialects that have different words from you. So like British chips versus American fries, right? We also get this same kind of variation even within the US. So the map that I'm showing you right now shows you different speakers' responses to the question of what they use to talk about a sweet carbonated beverage. So this is the very famous Coke, soda, pop debate. So here on this map, you can see in blue, you're looking at the pop speakers. In red, those are the sodas, and green are the Coke respondents. And yes, if you're not from the South, it is the case that the word Coke gets used to refer to all types of soda/pop. So you can go to a restaurant, ask for a Coke, and be asked what kind, right? So that's the green, that's in the South, you get the Coke. Really interesting for a person who lives in St. Louis is you can see that St. Louis is this intense blob of soda, sort of in the center of the country. I'm not sure why soda got so strong here. Most other things about the way English is produced and St. Louis maps onto what's happening more in the north, more like Chicago, but you can see that the soda situation is a special one here. So you can see this is sort of the debate most people know about. People in the US know that we are different in terms of the word we use to talk about these beverages. But we're maybe not quite as aware of the way we vary in terms of the way we pronounce things. Some aspects we are, but as I said, this variation shows up in all levels of linguistic structure. So the next map, I'm going to show you an example of differences in sound structure in the US. In this map, you can see blue and red, and these refer to whether speakers in those regions say the words cot and caught the same or different. So here I'm talking about cot, like the thing you sleep on, versus I caught the ball. I'm from Chicago, which you can see is dark red, and so these words are not homophones for me. I sleep on a cot, and I caught a ball yesterday. But for people in the blue regions, these two words are pronounced the same. They're homophones. And my students from these places think I'm crazy when I tell them that they're not homophones for me. So this one thing about this variation is this is something where two very different ways for that sounds work both make it into sort of what counts as standard in American English. So I'm from Chicago. These two vowels are not merged in my dialect, but I think I would generally be considered to speak standard American English. And then people from, the entire West and lots of other places do pronounce these two words the same, and they are also typically viewed as speaking the standard. So this is a nice example of the way in which variation exists, even sort of under the umbrella of what might be considered a standard dialect. And here the difference is I have two vowels, whereas you, blue person, have only one. Right? So I actually have more vowels in my phonological system than you do. That's sort of, linguistically speaking, that's a pretty big deal. But it's one that basically flies under the radar for most people. They don't realize that they differ from others that they talk to on this particular linguistic variable. We also see differences, of course, within syntax. So syntax refers to the way words are ordered. And one example of syntactic variety in the US is what's called the habitual B. So this is a marker. It's called an aspect marker. It's used to signal that a state of affairs being described happens habitually. So an example of a sentence that uses this would be, they usually be tired when they come home. So I don't have this particular marker in my own dialect, but many speakers in America do. It gives you this particular information that this thing that I'm talking about is repeated. It's important to note that even though it's the word be, it's not the same as the copula, which is the verb to be. It's this aspect marker. It sounds the same, but it functions differently linguistically. And the thing about this marker is you can't just throw it in wherever you want. It's a very rule-ordered feature, as we've talked about. So here, you can say they usually be tired when they come home, if you have this marker in your dialect. You can't say they be tired right now. For a speaker who has that marker in their dialect, that just sounds weird and ungrammatical. It's not just that be goes in there and suddenly you can have this other type of meaning. There's sort of a very specific and rule-bound way that this marker gets used. If you don't have this marker in your dialect, you're not going to know how to use it properly without somebody teaching you. And this is a common feature in the speech of African American English speakers. It's also a common feature in other varieties of global English, and this type of marker is found in lots of other languages. So this is linguistically common. It happens in various varieties of English. It doesn't typically get considered to be part of standard American English, but nonetheless, it's a perfectly rule-ordered linguistic feature that we see in the speech of some Americans. Okay, so to wrap up this video, a few reminders. One, variation within a language is totally natural and it's found in all languages. There are a lot of social factors that influence variation. Regional is a big one, so I showed you some maps. You can see that within different regions, people tend to speak in different ways. We're most likely to talk like the people that we interact with in person. But social factors also influence variation. So these can be things like race and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, age, gender. We see variation along all of these lines as well when we look at languages. And finally, I just want to leave you with the note that languages are always changing. As long as they're alive and humans are using them, humans will continue to innovate, continue to name new things, continue to change the way they put their words together or the way they pronounce them. Change in language is inevitable. Thanks for listening today. Next time, we're going to talk a bit about what it means to communicate in a second language.